Which of the following titles would best describe the content of this passage? A. William the Conqueror bringing castles to England. B. Defending the castle, technologies used to defend medieval castles. C. A short history of castles, the rise and fall of castles in England. Or D. Fancy living, learning about castles, palaces, and fortresses. As we've learned, a title needs to reflect the main idea of a text, or the idea that's touched upon throughout the entirety of the text. A title sets a reader up for what he's about to read. Based on this information, let's go through each choice and see if it would make an appropriate title for our passage. A. William the Conqueror bringing castles to England. It's true that the second paragraph does describe how castles were originally built in England by Norman invaders led by William the Conqueror, but William the Conqueror isn't actually mentioned in any of the other paragraphs, which go on to describe how castles evolved through the ages and their ultimate disuse. Therefore, this would not make a good title. B. Defending the castle, technologies used to defend medieval castles. Although we do see a lot of talk of the different ways castles were developed for peak defense, we also see paragraphs discussing castles being used outside of military purposes, such as with paragraph 3, which describes castles also serving as offices from which the lord would administer control over his fiefdom. And with paragraph 6, which, in contrast to discussing how castles defend themselves, actually talks about how gunpowder became powerful enough to break through stone walls. Therefore, a title focusing only on defending the castle would be incorrect. C. A short history of castles, the rise and fall of castles in England. This title really seems to cover it all. Because it encapsulates the rise and fall of the use of castles, which we've already seen reflected in the text, we can clearly see how each paragraph lends itself to this idea. For example, paragraph 2, which discusses castles being introduced to England, paragraphs 4 and 5, which describe different ways castles evolved to defend themselves, and paragraph 6, which, as we've seen, describes how they eventually fell to disuse. This seems to be our answer, but just in case, we'll check out choice D. D. Fancy living, learning about castles, palaces, and fortresses. This choice can be eliminated simply based on the fact that, although palaces and fortresses are mentioned in passing in the first paragraph, we don't see them show up anywhere else in the text. Therefore, this can be marked as incorrect, and C, a short history of castles, the rise and fall of castles in England, can be marked as our final answer.